Rick Ross is finished. The biggest boss just got caught. The private jet is gone. The diamonds are being called out as glass. The $150 million net worth just got laughed at on national television. And this week, Rick Ross was photographed crouched down in an airport terminal, hood up, trying to disappear into a boarding line like an ordinary passenger. The biggest boss. In coach. Hiding. And that is only the beginning of what leaked out over the last 72 hours. Welcome back. If you have not smashed that subscribe button, do it right now, because the empire Rick Ross spent 20 years building is unraveling in real time, and the receipts coming out this week are worse than anything 50 Cent or Drake ever managed to pin on him. Fake watches. Emergency landings. Cancelled tours. A jet that has not left the tarmac in weeks. And a paper trail from 1995 that Rick Ross swore for years did not exist. This is not one bad news cycle. This is the slow-motion collapse of the loudest luxury brand in hip-hop history, and by the time you finish this video, you are going to see exactly why the algorithm, the culture, and the money are all turning on him at the exact same moment. Because here is what nobody wants to say out loud. He may not be broke on paper, but the character he sold us for 2 decades, the untouchable Miami mogul, the yacht-owning, jet-flying, mansion-mowing kingpin, that character is dead. And it did not die from one scandal. It died from 100 tiny cuts, all landing in the same week. Let us start with the airport. Cameras caught Rick Ross this Monday morning waiting in a boarding line at a commercial gate, hood pulled tight, head angled toward the floor, doing everything a rich man does when he does not want to be seen. Fans went feral. The clip hit 10 million views before lunchtime. Uncle Murda jumped on it within hours, mocking the rapper for looking depressed while flying with the junkies. And Rosie, being Rosie, fired back with something about giving Uncle Murda's kids a free teeth cleaning, which only made the whole exchange funnier because instead of denying the story, he kept feeding it. Then came the explanation. He told his followers the jet was fine. It was just being upgraded. $500,000 in Starlink hardware. He chose to fly commercial because he wanted to go party with Trick Daddy down in Colombia. Once the flying boss was back on his 6-figure jet, he said, he was going to celebrate by buying more yachts. On paper, it sounds reasonable. Planes need maintenance. Rappers take vacations. Millions of people fly Delta every single day. But that is the problem. Rick Ross is not millions of people. He is the man who built his entire brand telling us he was not millions of people. And when your whole persona is I have never touched an airport gate in my life, showing up at an airport gate is not a neutral moment. It is a confession, whether you meant it that way or not. Public flight tracking records tell a story even louder than the photo. According to trackers watching his tail number, the plane has been sitting still for weeks. Not days. Weeks. That is not a Wi-Fi upgrade. That is a jet on a shelf. And then, right on cue, Drake posted a music video filmed next to his own private plane, with the engines humming behind him. The timing was so perfect it could not have been an accident, and the internet did not treat it like one. Now, before we get to what is coming next, let me make one thing clear. I am not saying he has $0. He owns Wingstop franchises. He owns real estate. He runs a label. He is sitting on wealth most artists will never see. But image and income are 2 different bank accounts, and only one of them is publicly bankrupt right now. Because look at what happened next. That same week, an interviewer looked Rick Ross in the eye and said a quick Google search puts your net worth at $150 million. Is that accurate? He laughed and said, is that a duh? That was the whole answer. Is that a duh? No number. No breakdown. No confirmation. Just the boss shrug he has used for 15 years. And for 15 years, the boss shrug worked. Nobody pushed. Nobody dug. Nobody made him back it up with paperwork. This time, the clip went viral for the opposite reason. People were not impressed by the deflection. They were laughing at it. The jewelry started catching fire next. A high-profile jeweler went on camera and said the AP Rosie has been wearing around Miami for months. The one with the green emerald stones was not real. He said that specific watch was only ever produced twice, one at 37 millimeters, one at 41, and that he personally knew both owners, and neither of them was the Miami rapper. That is not a broad accusation. That is a nerdy, technical, verifiable claim. And that is exactly the kind of claim that spreads fastest, because it is small enough to remember and specific enough to sound like insider truth. He tried to laugh it off, insisting the piece was real and that the whole bit was just him having fun. But once a jeweler puts a serial number on a fake, laughing does not work anymore. Then came the ticket receipts. He announced his Port of Miami 20-year anniversary tour with the kind of confidence you would expect from a headliner, and within days, seat maps leaked showing entire sections empty. Buy one, get one 50% off promotions started appearing. Discount codes were being handed out like flyers. And Drake, right on schedule, posted an emoji online that everyone read as a reaction. He did not have to say a word. The algorithm did the diss for him. Then came the delay of his solo album, Set in Stone. He posted a caption that read like a threat and a prayer at the same time. Iceman melted, stone lasts eternity. Fans read that as a shot at Drake, whose Iceman project had just outperformed anything Rosie had released in years. Business-wise, plenty of people argued the delay made sense. You do not drop an album into a headwind. But image-wise, delaying your comeback record in the exact week you get caught flying commercial is not a look. It is a resignation letter with better lighting. And that is the trap of the persona he built. When you spend 20 years telling the world you are the biggest boss, every ordinary decision starts to look like an emergency. A commercial flight becomes a bankruptcy filing. A tour discount becomes a fire sale. A delayed album becomes a white flag. He did not just build a brand. He built a brand with zero tolerance for boring days. And the second boring days started stacking up, the internet started reading them as evidence. But here is where it gets darker. Because to understand why the fall is happening this fast, you have to go back to the beginning. You have to go back to the part of his story that he tried to bury for years, and only admitted to when the paper trail made denial impossible. Before the beard. Before the Maybach. Before hustlin'. Before Jay-Z, William Leonard Roberts II was a football recruit out of Carroll City, Florida. Big body, quick feet, all-state honors, scholarships on the table. That part of his story he has always shared willingly. It is the part that came right after that the rapper spent a decade dodging. Because in December of 1995, William Roberts, age 19, put on a corrections officer uniform at a Florida state facility. He clocked in. He clocked out. He collected checks. And for roughly 18 months, until he resigned in 1997, he was on the state payroll pulling in around $26,000 a year. When 50 Cent first surfaced that story publicly back in 2008, Rosie did what most rappers do when a threat lands. He denied it flat. "No, that is not true," he said on camera. Words on the record. Zero wiggle room. And then, within days, the photo dropped. A 19-year-old William Roberts, in full uniform, standing among fellow officers, smiling for the state ID. Timestamped. Undeniable. Doing the talking for everybody. That single image caused more damage than any diss track has ever managed because it was not an accusation. It was a receipt. Years later, he finally softened the story. He confirmed the job on camera, but shrunk the timeline. He said he was maybe 20 at the time, that he barely made it out of training, that he lasted maybe 4 months before he was let go for being chronically tardy. Almost self-deprecating. Almost cute. Except that public employment records, which anyone with a search engine can pull, put the actual tenure at closer to 18 months, not 4. And the attendance record on file was strong, not spotty. In other words, the version he told the world and the version filed with the state of Florida still do not line up. That gap, that quiet paperwork gap, is exactly where his enemies have been living for 15 years. And 50 Cent has never let anyone forget it. That is a pattern with 50. He does not need new ammunition. He just needs to make sure old ammunition never fades. Every time Rosie starts to breathe, 50 posts the picture again. Every time he tries a rebrand, 50 posts the picture again. Every time a new scandal hits, 50 does not even have to caption it. He just posts the picture again. And each time, a new generation of listeners meets the same footnote for the first time. Then there is the name itself. Because even that is contested territory. Freeway Rick Ross, the real one, the West Coast drug trafficker whose story was already famous long before William Roberts ever picked up a microphone, has said on multiple occasions that the rapper borrowed his name, his story, and pieces of his image without permission. Asked whether he has ever confronted him face-to-face, Freeway said no, because every time he is in the room, the rapper disappears. He took it seriously enough to file a lawsuit in 2010. Casual fans do not even know that lawsuit exists. Which is the point. The most famous name in modern hip-hop was disputed territory before the first single ever dropped. Now zoom out. Take a step back. Look at the full picture. William Roberts, a former corrections officer, wearing a name legally challenged by the actual man it belongs to, playing a character built on street credibility he did not earn, selling luxury that other artists are now openly questioning. For 20 years, none of that mattered because the music was too loud. Hustlin' hit. Port of Miami went #1. Second album, third album, fifth album, sixth album, all #1 on the Billboard chart. The fourth barely lost to an Eminem release. Maybach Music Group became a real label with a real roster. He did not just survive. He ran the decade. And the receipts, the uniform, the lawsuit, the fake watches, all of it got drowned out by the noise of winning. But when the winning slows down, the receipts come back. Every single one of them. All at once. Which brings us to Drake. Because you cannot tell this story without Drake, and, honestly, none of this hits the way it hits without Drake sitting on the other side of the table. Here's the part that most channels are missing. Before Drake ever clowned Rick Ross online, before the memes, before the airport hood-up jokes, Drake was one of the biggest reasons the Rosie empire even got as big as it did. For more than 15 years, they were not just collaborators. They were a franchise. Aston Martin Music. Stay Schemin'. Diced Pineapples. Lemon Pepper Freestyle. Money in the Grave. The boss himself said, on camera, more than once, that out of every rapper he had ever worked with, Drake was his favorite person to be on a song with. There was even a joint album quietly in the works. The working title was While Low. Fans waited on it for years. And here is a stat that gets buried every time this story gets told. Out of his entire discography, only one song has ever crossed 1 billion streams on Spotify. 1. Money in the Grave. Featuring Drake. In other words, the biggest streaming number in Rick Ross's 20-year career is not a solo record. It is a Rosie and Drake record. That is a statistic that used to be a compliment. Today it is a wound. Because in March of 2024, everything cracked. Future and Metro dropped We Don't Trust You. Kendrick Lamar's verse on Like That lit the internet on fire. And on track 13, Everyday Hustle, sat Rick Ross. Given how close he and Drake had been for over a decade, that placement alone raised eyebrows. Then Rosie unfollowed Drake on Instagram. A tiny gesture. 2 thumb taps. But after 15 years of collaboration, an unfollow reads louder than any diss track. The message was received. Drake responded with push-ups. He did not just clap back. He math-shamed. He pointed out that most of the boss's biggest Billboard hits, I'm on One, Money in the Grave, Lemon Pepper Freestyle, all featured Drake. That was not a bar. That was a spreadsheet. And it stung because it was factually true. Rosie came back with champagne moments. Music video. Ghostwriter jokes. Plastic surgery jokes. A sample of Drake's own voice used against him in the outro. He claimed Drake had gone loopy. He claimed Drake had a nose job. He claimed BBL Drizzy had called mommy on him. He posted alleged text messages. He told Drake to tell his mother he stayed out past curfew. Drake fired back that the rapper had not eaten in days, that he was performing at proms for gas money, that he was one nosy goof living in a 2-bedroom apartment, and that the Miami waterfront mansion was really just the Miami starter pack because the land underneath was not even his. That is when the beef stopped being about music and started being about lifestyle. And when your entire brand is lifestyle, an attack on lifestyle is not a diss. It is an audit. Then came the moment that lives forever. July 2024. Ignite Music Festival. Vancouver, Canada. Drake's home country. Rosie closes his set. His DJ hits play on Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us. In Drake's own hometown. The crowd surged. Bottles flew. Security scrambled. Video leaked within minutes of a Rick Ross associate hitting the floor unconscious before order was restored. Millions of views overnight. Drake liked the post. 50 Cent posted a clip of Tia Kemp laughing at the whole thing. And in one weekend, the boss went from headliner to punchline on foreign soil in the middle of the biggest rap rivalry of the decade. Even his own private jet made an emergency landing in Dallas around that stretch. Everyone on board was safe. But the timing was, again, unbelievable. He had literally posted days earlier telling Drake to be safe on his old cargo jet. And now his own plane was on the ground with fire trucks around it. Drake liked the post about that too. The internet does not need coincidence to be real. The internet only needs coincidence to be funny. And DMX, years before any of this, called it. Asked who impressed him lyrically in the game, DMX could barely name anyone, and when pressed on the Miami rapper, he shrugged. He raps about eating, DMX said. He raps about smoking. He raps about the Maybach and the Aston Martin. Good for him. But how much can one man eat? That criticism, buried in an old interview, got resurrected the moment the empire started to shake. Because the internet does not forget. The internet only files. Meanwhile, on the business side, the receipts kept getting worse. The Meek Mill joint album he rushed out in 2023, the one he himself admitted came together in about 2.5 months, peaked at number 23 on the chart. 23. For a Rick Ross and Meek album. 10 years earlier, that project would have entered at number 1 on autopilot. Instead, it got quietly buried under the noise of everybody else's news cycles. And once a commercial miss is on the board, it becomes part of the narrative permanently. Fans stop asking what is next. They start asking what happened. Then the running jokes multiplied. Rosie mowing his own 400-acre lawn in a tinted window John Deere. On its own, that is charming. It is a rich guy who likes cutting grass with his boys on the weekend. But dropped into a week where he is also flying commercial and hiding in a hood at the airport, it stops reading as charming. It starts reading as a man trying to save on landscaping. Uncle Murda cracked exactly that joke. You do not want to pay to get the lawn cut, huh? He laughed. But the internet did not laugh with him. The internet laughed at him. And this is the part that most people do not fully understand yet. What is really breaking the boss is not one story. It is the compound interest of every story finally hitting the same account at the same time. The uniform photo. The name lawsuit. The fake watch accusation. The commercial flight. The empty tour seats. The delayed album. The lost billion-stream partner. The joint album that never dropped. The disowned Toronto set. The knocked-out associate. The emergency landing. The girlfriend clapping in Drake's comments. The two-bedroom apartment jokes. The Miami starter pack. Every single one on its own is survivable. All of them together in the same news cycle are not. And Drake knows it. On his new material, Buried in the Bars, is another shot that fans instantly clocked as aimed at Rosie. Something about 3 albums of trash, 2 years too late, and it was fun while it lasted, you're washed. Where is Iceman? There is Iceman. The throat goats. Every line calibrated. Every line quotable. Every line designed to trend. And the boss has reportedly started skipping certain verses in his own live shows, which is the kind of small, professional retreat that fans notice immediately. Then there is 50 Cent. Because of course there is 50 Cent. Asked recently whether he and Rosie had ever patched things up, Rick Ross was blunt. Never cool. Not since day one. He said 50 does not own his masters. He said Eminem and Dr. Dre rescued 50's career. He said he came in through slip and slide with nobody handing him anything. And then he said, casually, that 50 reportedly lives in a 2-bedroom apartment, which, coming from a man Drake just accused of also living in a 2-bedroom apartment, hit strange. 50 Cent responded, of course. 50 always responds. He posted photos of the rapper at the airport. He posted Tia Kemp laughing. He reminded everyone, one more time, of that uniform. And meanwhile, 50's Diddy documentary sat at #1 for weeks, which is the quietest, deadliest flex in this whole story. While the boss fights to protect his image, 50 Cent just prints money. So the question everyone is now asking is not whether Rick Ross is rich. The question is whether he is real. Whether the boss was ever really the boss. Whether the jet was ever really his. Whether the mansion is actually on land he owns. Whether the diamonds were ever real diamonds. Whether the 25 ventures and partnerships he brags about actually cash flow the lifestyle he shows. And the terrifying part for him is that he cannot answer any of those questions with a laugh anymore. The laugh does not work now. The is that a does not work now. The internet has already made up its mind, and unmaking a mind is a much longer job than making one. Which brings us back to the airport. To the hood. To the boarding line. To that single, quiet, ordinary image of a man standing among strangers with his eyes down. That image is not the scandal. That image is the summary. 20 years of persona, condensed into one photograph of a rapper who no longer looks like the biggest boss and is not allowed to look like anything else. Because the moment he stops being the boss, the entire product line ends. The label. The endorsements. The verses that command premium features. The tour prices. The luxury cosigns. All of it is priced on the persona, not the paperwork. And here is the meta loop that nobody is closing. Rosie could sit down tomorrow, open his books, show every dollar, prove the jewelry, produce the jet keys, and it would not fix the story. Because the story is not about numbers anymore. The story is about belief. And belief, once cracked, is a much harder thing to weld back together than any diamond, any Wingstop franchise, any Maybach lease. So watch what happens next. Watch the tour. Watch set in stone whenever it finally lands. Watch whether that jet ever leaves the tarmac. Watch whether the boss ever gets back on a song with Drake. Watch whether the joint album, the one that used to be called While Low, ever gets whispered about again. Watch whether his next photograph is on a yacht, on a jet, or in another boarding line. Because if the biggest boss in hip-hop can be reduced to a hooded man crouching in a terminal, then nobody's persona is safe. Not the mansions. Not the jets. Not the diamonds. Not the myths. Not even yours. And that is what makes this moment historic. Rick Ross is not just losing an argument with the internet. He is being audited by the entire culture, in public, in real time, with no adjournment, no delay, and no verdict yet. So tell me in the comments. Do you think Rick Ross is actually broke, or do you think he is just having the worst PR month of his career? Do you think the boss brand comes back, or is this the beginning of the end? Do you think Drake made this happen, or was Rosie always going to walk himself here? And is there any move, any single decision, that he can make right now that pulls the plane back into the air? Drop your verdict below. Hit that like button if you made it this far. Subscribe and turn on that bell so the next breakdown lands the second the next chapter drops, and trust me, the next chapter is already loading. Because if this week taught us anything, it is that the biggest boss in hip-hop does not get to write his story alone anymore. The internet has the pen. And the internet is not putting it down. I will see you in the next one.